Hey guys, James at Kartz-N-Fartz. So today we're going to do a Eco Battery 105 51 volt through hole install on this 2011 Club Car Precedent. But I want to show you a few steps I haven't shown in my previous videos on what to do when you start. So if you're an experienced golf cart installer, mechanic, you'll know all this stuff. But for you guys that can want to try to do this at your house, it's very simple. So I want to show you some of the steps that I think is going to be beneficial. So before you start taking the batteries out and cleaning the tub and everything, get yourself a voltmeter. Mine just happens to be like a test light style. Hook it on your main negative cable and you can test the first one, 7 volts. Well, this battery pack has 2 bad batteries, so this is a good time. That one's kind of mediocre. So what I want you to do is I want you to look for any wires that'll hook to any of these terminals, all right? So we've got one hooked right here. So now I'm going to take my test light and I want to monitor how much voltage is going to that. So I've got 14 volts going to that. Well, really, that's the 7 volts here and probably 7 volts there. So anywhere on this wire, whether you hook it here or there, this previous installer knew that he was going to get, probably expecting 16 volts, the 2 8-volt batteries in series. Well, that is my headlight wire. I've done a lot of these. I know that that is going to go to my 12-volt source. So if you want to take a piece of tape, wrap it around there, write 12V on there, or 12 plus, that's 12-volt positive. I'm going to look at the rest of my terminals. I don't see anything hooked to them. Got one over here. Now, this is an OBC cart. The way you can tell, you can see that gray box right there where the negative terminal lead, this negative lead, comes right through the middle of it. You don't need an OBC. OBCs are used to cut the old chargers on and off. You do not need it. Lithium chargers just do not need it. So anyway, we're going to bypass that, but that's this positive wire here. When you follow it, when I get the batteries out, is going to go to our charging port, which we're going to remove and we're going to replace. You'll see that later in the video. Now we've got another wire here. This one right here, and just about 90% of the time they have the yellow connectors on there. This is your negative for your headlight kit. And this negative wire will either be taped to this negative cable, go under the cart, and plug in or wire up to the controller, which is behind this panel, to the negative, the B minus negative. Well, anyway, we're not going to need that, so we're just going to unplug it, just like that. And when I take the batteries out, you'll see this later in the video, that will go into the same harness as this blue wire. And again, we're going to replace all that with the step-down converter that's furnished with the kit. But I wanted to show you, if you got any wires at all, go ahead and take time to probe them and find out what the voltage is. Now, if I go over here to my positive voltage, a little bonus video, this whole golf cart will not run on 27 volts. So that's the reason we're doing the upgrade. Now's a great time to do the upgrade when the lead acids are old and weak and just worn out. So let's get started on the video. Now, before I start taking these cables loose and the batteries out, I want to take the run toe switch, put it down on the toe position, and now I'm going to start taking everything out for cleaning. All right, guys, so I got the cart turned around. I got the batteries removed. I've got the battery tray rinsed out, and now I'm ready to start my install. Went ahead and removed my floor mat, and you're not going to have to remove that pedal group, but I do want to show you some things that I like to do. So the throttle sensors underneath here, those are actually the wires that go to it. These bolts here, and you can tell they've been there a while, they tend to rust into the frame. So your main frame goes right along here. There's another main bolt. That bolts into the frame. That's where it runs. If you ever have to service the M-Core in the future, which you will, they last 10 years or so, sometimes longer, sometimes less. But go ahead and saturate that, because the next guy that pulls that out might be you. The other side, those go into plastic. Those never give me a problem, but those do. So let's go ahead and just shoot a little WD-40, be done with it. Now, when we come to the battery box, so Two things I like to do, it just makes the battery fit better. There's a little notch. It looks like this one. There's a little notch. I use this little oscillating tool that I got. They're not very expensive. Cut it this way, cut it that way. Knock that little notch out. And then, depending on where you want to put your charger, there's another tab right there that I like to cut out. So I like to cut those two tabs out for the 51 volt 105, and that way I'm preparing myself for install. Have not removed the charging port yet. We'll get to that. And this is what your box is going to look like when you order it. So you've got your battery, and then you've got all your supplies here. And if I didn't mention it, everybody else does. Wear some safety glasses. If you're going to be crawling underneath the cart, you get a little piece of sand in your eye, you'll be glad you did. So anyway, it's a good idea. I'm not going to say everyone's going to do it, but it is a good idea. So let me unbox this and show you what comes all in the box. All right, guys, got everything unboxed. So you can see you're going to have the actual battery itself, and that's what they call a through-hole battery. It's going to come with the registration card, but there's also going to be, with this Gen 3 battery, there's going to be ways you can actually register it on your Bluetooth app or your Wi-Fi app. You're going to have two different, this is the big difference between a Gen 3 and a Gen 2. You're going to have two different COM ports, and we'll get to that in the video. When you unbox it, it's going to have your terminal end covers, a little top plate that's going to go right on top of there. And there's also going to be some bolts in here. There you go. 13mm bolts to hold the cable on. When I open up the other box, I have my wake up button. Again, we'll get to that in a little harness. You're going to have a charging port adapter, depending on which cart you have. This is specifically designed for the Club Car Precedent. More recyclable cardboard. You're gonna get a lot of cardboard. This is your dash mounted meter. We're gonna talk about that. And we've got a cable that goes with that in the bracket. More cardboard. This is your DC-DC converter. This is a step down converter, whatever you want to call it. That's going to be a harness. We're going to do a little bit of modifications to that harness to make a neat install. Depends on which application. And that is actually your converter. So this is going to drop it anywhere from 40 to 90 volts back down to 13.5. That'll run your headlights, underglow lights, any kind of radio, any kind of accessories that you have. And then we've got this battery charger. So the battery charger is kind of neat. The way Eco's battery chargers are, this is the same battery charger that'll work on a 36 volt or 38 volt lithium battery all the way up to a 51. So it's got technology inside the charger to let it know how much voltage to put out. And it's probably communicating with one of these COM ports to the main battery. So you've got some hardware. We're definitely going to use that. Pull the charger out. The charger is going to have a couple extra cables on there. And this one here, you're going to notice it's got a cable plugged into there, and this got some loose wires. That is a charger interlock, and it's used for LSV vehicles. This Club Car Precedent that I'm installing today is not a LSV. It does not have the hookup for this. So I'm just going to unhook this cable. Can I do it with one hand? Yep, I got it. So I will not be using this. So that's going to be trash, but don't be alarmed that you've got an extra port. Now, one thing that I personally love about Eco Battery, there's only like about 4 batteries that they make. Different cases, but it's basically the brackets, the charging port adapter. All these reducers will work with anyone with, a 51 volt system. Well, actually, what did it say? 40 up to 90 volts. It's going to work. So the harness is the same. You might have to alter how long the harness is. The gauge is the same. The wake up button's the same. So if you do have a problem, it's less likely for them to be on back order, not having the part that you need. So to me, that's a biggie right there. And then of course, we'll get the styrofoam out. More recyclable cardboard. So ton of cardboard you're going to get. So those are the components we're going to use. So let's get started on it. All right, so like I said, I did jump ahead and took the floor mat up. The way I took the floor mat up, there's 2 bolts here. You can see the little push pins that snap in the side. 2 bolts on this side, 2 bolts on that side. I usually peel the mat underneath the cup holders. They're a little bit flexible. Peel the mat off and then slide the hole over the brake pedal assembly. This brake, that's actually your brake adjustment. This brake adjustment cover, or whatever you want to call it, which is right here. It has a little push pin, which is right there. So generally, if you stick your finger in that hole and just pull up, the push pin comes off, but try not to lose that. This customer has an inner basket, so I'm gonna use it. Now, I'm not gonna say you have to do it my way, but the way I do it, when I pull all these bolts, there's another couple right here, pull these 2 bolts out. I believe those are T30s. And I always put everything in my ball holder right there. That's from the golf course. So this way I know where everything is. There also is going to be a T15 right there. I haven't taken it out yet. The basket makes it a little difficult. I'm going to have to get in there and do it with a 90-degree rather than just with my cordless drill. But I do need to take that off, take this out the way so we can do some things there. So next step, what I'm going to do, what you need to do is take these out. There's 3. 1 there, 1 in the middle, 1 on the edge. Also up here, you can see I've already loosened them up. Take this one loose, that one loose. You don't have to pull it all the way out. There's going to be 2 on the back corner. So we got 4 right there. And then this body is going to lift up. So let's see if I can lift it up. A little difficult in one hand, but you can see where it broke it free, where I can get those tabs out. So let's go to the other side. And guys, doing this with 2 hands, it's going to be a little easier for you guys. But I want to be sure I don't miss any steps. And I did. I missed 1 step. So get a pick. There's going to be a little cover right here that holds this in. If you stick a pick in there and pull it towards the inside, real gently, it just pops right off. You don't break anything. Put it up here where I store everything. Now, let's see if that just comes out. Sure does. So now we've got the charging port panel. Lay it right there. So now the goal is to take these Phillips head screws off. There's 3 of them. And let me get the charging port out of the way. All right, guys, so I've got those screws loose. I also took this top bolt. That's another T30. I took it loose because we're going to need to get behind this panel right here. And I put my bolt up here, keeping them all together. Now, let me tell you another trick that I do. I say trick, and it's no big deal. So this charging port, you're never going to use it again. Take you some cutters and cut it off. I mean, these things are cheap if you need them, but you're not going to need them. If you want to take the time to feed it out, you can, but this is going in the trash can. So now I need to get this harness out the way. So we're going to pull this loose. When I pulled it forward, then I slid it up, and I'm going to follow this wire. Now, this cart does have an OBC. You can tell by that gray box, and we're going to bypass that. That's going to be part of this video. So the OBC carts, the charging port's going to have a red wire that goes to your main positive, which is over there. The negative is going to hook underneath here. So as I fold this out and around and feed it out. And again, guys, I know this is 1 hand. I hope that I'm being thorough enough and you're following everything. So this wire, the gray wire, which is a charger interlock, goes behind here, and if I pull it, it's going to look like that. So that's 1 wire that goes to there. The red wire went to the positive. The black wire hooks to right here. Again, I can take time to unhook it, but I know it's going to end up getting cut. Sorry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and snip it. And that is that. Don't need that anymore. So now what I'm gonna do is, let's talk about the OBC for a second. So the OBC does two very important things. Number one, it allows current to go through the blue and white wire, and that's what we want to address. The other thing it does, it cuts your power drive charger on and off. You're not going to be using a power drive charger. Your kit comes with a new charger, and it does not require an OBC. So we're going to bypass this completely. The negative terminal, which comes from over here, that's your B negative to your controller. It goes through the center of the OBC, and it signals how much current's going through there. It's okay to leave it going through there, but it's not going to use it anymore. It's just going to be like a dummy. Now, you can take it out with these two, I think they're 10s or 3/8, but you're going to have a big hole. Let's don't do that. Let's just leave it in place. It's going to be fine. It's not going to be good for anything. So the next thing I need to do is I need to cut these wires that are going to the OBC, because we're going to do something with this plug. So I'm going to take two hands. I'm going to unplug this gray wire, and it has 6 wires going into it. 6 wires. It's got 6 wires going into it. So I'm going to unplug that, but I'm going to go ahead and cut it off close to the OBC, because I'm going to need to do something with these wires here. All right, so I've got it cut there with 2 hands. I cut the 2 black wires that went into the OBC. One of those just came right off. I don't know where I threw it, but that was the one that was connected to the white connector. This other black wire goes to your negative bundle right here. So I'm just gonna get my cutters. These hook cutters are really good, and they work a lot better with 2 hands. All right, so if we can get that in there and get it cut, it's gonna be fine. You're gonna have a little piece of wire left over, chunk it. And now it's a little cleaner back here. Probably doesn't look through for this. So this is what we want to address next. So let's go talk about what we're going to do about that. All right, guys, so we've got that plug out that I told you about. So I'm over here on the workbench using a tripod, which I don't use very often. This right here, we're going to use this later. This is a stitch removal, and I got it off Amazon, real super cheap. But if you look, you're going to have this little clear plastic tape. If you do that, look how easy that comes apart. It's just too daggone easy. So anyway, get you a little 99-cent stitch remover. So the next step is we want to hook the blue and white wire together. So this is a signal that it gets. I think it's from the ignition switch, or it may be the controller, one way or the other. It has to go in and out of the OBC. So we're basically going to hook these two together like that. But we're going to do it in a pretty cool way. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of every wire except for the blue and white wire. So be careful on that. So I'm going to take my little wire cutters, and the reason I'm doing this, you'll see in a second. Get all those out the way. All right, we got those out the way. The next step is, and I'm trying to do this with this camera. Hopefully you can see it. There's a little green, where's the camera at? There's a little green locking tab. Let's see if this helps you. I don't know if you can see that. There it is right there. So we're going to take that square in there. We're going to kind of twist a screwdriver sideways in there and try to pop it out. Now they will go flying, so I'm going to try to cover it with my hand to make sure I don't lose it. Sometimes it takes a couple times. There it is, it's loose. And it's going to come out. So that's what it's going to look like. What that does is that keeps those pins, if I put a light up here, it keeps those pins in there. So now I need to take some pliers. Let me get my needle nose pliers. And by the way, at the end of this video, I'm gonna keep every tool out so you'll know every tool that you need to have. So it's gonna be at the end of the video. All right, let's try this angle. So as you can see, I need to take the bottom tabs. So I'm gonna reach in here with my needle nose pliers. I'm gonna grab the bottom. I'm going to push it towards the middle and then pull it out. All right, I got the right one that time. All right, so now the red one is the middle one. Grab a needle nose, barely pull it to the middle, pull it straight out. Now see why I cut it short? It's a lot easier than pulling one out that's that long. So now the bottom again, check every time. Don't pull out the wrong one, because I'm not an expert on putting them back together. Purple one is over here. Pull it down. All right, so I'm left with just those two. Now I'm going to take my little lock mechanism, and it might even be easier with the needle nose. Be sure I'm in position. There it goes. Just push it till it clicks. There you go. So now I'm ready to hook these two together. All right, guys, so if you're a follower of the channel, you know I never use a tripod, but that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So now I'm going to size this thing up. Take some wire strippers. And I know these videos are long, guys, but again, I see so many videos online to where they may skip a step and it may stump you for a second. So I try not to do that. So as I saw another good YouTuber, if you don't twist wires, you're just dumb. So twist your wires just a little bit. Take a little bit of heat shrink tubing. I got this little multi-pack. Again, thank you, Amazon. They're cheap. I'm gonna slide it on the wire. Twist these wires together. Make sure I've got a great contact. Slide my heat shrink over it. Take your heat gun or a hair dryer. I just happen to have this type of heat gun. Actually, I just got it because I saw someone else on YouTube using it and it works pretty good. So let's heat that together. And don't lay that where you're going to burn yourself. Now, there we are. So that is what it's going to look like. So now, don't forget to plug it back in. Hate to admit it. I've done one of these one time before. I got busy and found it laying on my bench. Had to take it back apart. So be sure to plug that back apart. The cart will not run without these two wires connected. So anyway, I am going to give a little shout out. So I got that little trick from David Hicks at Revolution Golf Carts in Augusta, Georgia. He's a great resource to buy OEM club parts. Very sharp guy. So anyway, give him a little shout out. Thanks, David, for that tip. So that's not my tip. All right, let's get back on the install. All right, so I've got that plugged in. Super simple. And if you don't have any heat shrink tube, if you crimp it with a butt-end connector or if you tape it, that's fine. I just know that's permanent. And I'm doing this, I'm getting paid to do this. So I want to make sure that it's right and it does not come back. Once you're finished with that, you're ready to put everything back behind there. And sometimes right down here at the junction, you may see a zip tie that you have to cut loose. This one was already broken by. And he's got a few extra wires. I think he had a stereo at one time or something, but we'll figure all that out. Actually, that stereo is broken, so that is some old stuff there. So actually, you know what? There it is. There's the zip tie I was talking about. I didn't even know it was under there. So once you put that in, it has to go behind this little slot right here. And let's see, you can tell right there if you can see it through the camera. And once you get it down and back, make sure that hole lines up, and I'm ready to put that T30 back. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is install the voltage reducer and the charging port adapter. And if you notice the little feet, you've got two holes there. Well, you've got two holes at the bottom, but when you mount it flat, you can't access that. So you're only gonna be able to use 3 of those holes. And all this wiring goes inside the unit. So this is stuff that's not supplied with the kit, so you're gonna need 3 screws. So what I like to do, and everybody's got their own preference, I like to mount it solid right there. This is on the passenger side. I'm gonna need 2 hands to do this. I'm not gonna mount it all the way down to the bottom. I'm gonna lift it up just a little bit, flush up against that tub, and mount it. Don't worry about that, that's gonna be out of the way. So once I mount the 1 on the bottom, the 2 on the top, I'll be fine. your charging port adapter. I've already installed it off camera. I'm not gonna try to keep this video shorter than it usually is. I know it's gonna be long. And it's gonna have the quick connect connector that goes to your battery charger. And but for now, I've got it mounted. Let me go ahead and mount the voltage reducer. All right, so we've got it mounted. This one on this side is right on the curve, so you might have to come in at a slight angle and then straighten it out, but it'll be fine. It ain't going nowhere. So this is going to be the wiring harness, so let's go ahead and do some modifications to that. All right, so this is your wiring harness for your voltage reducer. Let's go ahead and take it out. Remember my little Amazon stitch removal tool? We're getting ready to use that. So this harness, we're going to use every wire in it. However, this is like a multi-fit harness. This will fit every cart. It's the same harness. Every one I've ever put in, they don't install anything different. So right here on the end for the Precedent, remember we're talking about a Club Car Precedent. I'm going to go ahead and snip that end off. I know that there's going to be more that I'm going to have to cut off, but with that tape, I'm going to go ahead and get it out of the way. Then I'm going to pull my orange wire out. All this will make sense in a second. As I pull my orange wire out, you're going to run across some of this tape that holds the connector on top of the wire. Take my stitch removal tool, zip it out. Lets me continue on. Let's zip it out again. And I am going to take it loose all the way to about 5 or 6 inches. Then I'm gonna cut this, get this out the way. Now there's gonna be a reason for that. And slide it back in. Now I'm ready to mess with this harness. Let's go install it. Now at the same time I'm getting ready to install that, I'm also going to install my cable to my meter, my dash meter for the voltage, and also my wake up button. Be very careful. So I'm gonna cut the zip ties, or bread ties, or if you want to undo that, whatever. That's what that cable's gonna look like. And go ahead and take the wake up button out. Got the same deal. You can either untie them by hand or just be very careful. Double check. Get that out the way, where you can stretch that out. And this piece here actually plugs into I call it a DIN plug. That's going to plug into the side of your battery. So, and this will connect onto your harness, like so. So this wake up button, it does have a little push tab. You can push it and unplug it. So we'll do that and drill a hole in the dash to mount that. But at least I can go ahead and run my harness. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, at this point it's time to take the key switch plate off. I'm gonna get that out the way. So this T15, believe it or not, it was hand tight, but yours, they're not usually hand tight. So you can take a drill or whatever, take that screw off. It's pretty long, it's about that long. Don't lose it, all right? I'm gonna keep my T15, that's the only thing I'm gonna use it for. I'm gonna keep it up there. Then I'm gonna pull the panel loose. Now, I need to take this panel and put it on my workbench. So typically, without any turn signals or anything, you're gonna need to unplug the headlight switch and unplug the main harness over here, and this panel should come complete. That was it. And by the way, when you unplug the headlight wires, these yellow wires, it doesn't matter which one goes where, so don't sweat over that. One other thing I like to do is just kind of mock fit it up there. My wiring harness, I'm doing this with one hand again, is gonna come right up this channel. So right where it goes in, which is this first groove to the left of that hole, I'm gonna put a notch right there. The reason I'm gonna put a notch is easier for the harness to slide through there. So I just take some 10 snips and maybe cut 1/2 inch. It doesn't take a whole lot. And doesn't have to be pretty because you'll never see it. And be careful not to touch those wires, but that gives me a little notch where the wiring harness can come straight through. All right, guys, so I've got my harness to my wake up button. I've got my harness to my battery meter, and then I've got that orange wire. Remember, I stripped off the housing of that. So now I've also got a few pieces of duct tape. I'll show you what that's for. So I want to measure or guesstimate where on this dash everything is going to go. And to be honest with you, if you put them all about that length, you're going to be fine. Then I want to make a 90-degree bend here, and I'm going to use this trough. That's the reason I took that covering off of that orange wire. It's just going to be too bulky, and it's going to bulge on your floor mat. So take some strips of tape to hold it in place. And again, all this, that's going to give me ample room. I've got ample amount of wire. And as I go down this channel, keep it tucked as low as possible. I like to shove my tape down in there. I'm gonna have room back here to feed the other end of the wire and also to store the other end of the wire. There's not enough room back here to bundle it up in most cases. So get another strip of tape. Usually I can do it in about 4 strips. Keep that in place. And I'm gonna go all the way back here to the back, which I know you cannot see on camera. And let's tape it down. And I'll show you a different angle here in a second. All right, let's take a look at that. So I've got all that. That's gonna be back behind there. All this is coming down. And I'm going to tuck it underneath. This is the main harness that goes to your key switch and everything up front. So I'm gonna go up under this, behind here, and then I'm gonna come inside this hole right here. That goes to your battery compartment. Then I'll worry about coiling any excessive cables up because you got all this to contend with. But you can't cut it because it's got all those fancy connectors. So I'll worry about that inside the battery compartment. All right, so a trick that I like to do when I pull it up here through this hole, I have an idea my battery is going to go from here to here, and my terminals and my COM ports, remember those little COM ports right there that you hook up? All that is going to be in about this position right here, maybe 4 or 5 inches off of the center. So I want to have my ring terminals. That is from your wiring, your voltage reducer harness. I want to have those close where they can bolt up, and anything else I want to be behind there. The reason for that, there's a gap about that big that I can take this excessive wire, wrap it up, tuck it in behind there, and I'll eliminate a tremendous amount of bundles under here. If you want to zip tie it under here and it doesn't bother you, that's fine, but I like to try to hide as much of that excessive wire underneath this panel, in between that little groove there. I don't know if you can tell, but it's like I said, it's about that thick. So when I pull my wires through here, I only pull enough to where it's going to hook into the side of the battery. I've got a adapter for that one. Remember, that's my wake up button, and it's over there on the workbench. So I've got my wake up button, my meter, and then my voltage reducer harness. And then we'll use these 2 wires hook up to our accessories. So I got that part down pat. Now I need to work on zip tying this and tucking it up. And when I do that, I can go ahead and put my charging port plate or kick plate, whatever you want to call that. I can go ahead and put that down there. Not a problem at all. And by the way, the reason I took that panel off earlier was just to clean all this hay and mud off when I hosed off the battery tub. So that can actually go back together also. All right, you can see I got the kick panel in. Once I got it in, I put my 3 screws, 1 on each end in the middle. I went ahead and tightened down my body, 4 screws there. That's the T30. And now I can take my little charging port adapter, which will snap on the Eco adapter. Whoops, I got it upside down. Let's get it the right way. There you go. I've got my little brake adjuster cover. Push that tab in. And now you can see my harness is neat. That will push down. And when I put my floor mat on there, it's going to be good. So now I need to prepare my dash for what all these wires are going to be for. All right, so we've got our dash out. I've already did my little groove for all those cables to go through so it doesn't bulge up. The next thing I've got to do is create a place for this meter. So on the precedents, and hopefully this will pick up, there's a little indentation. There you go, I think you can see it. There's an indentation that's going to center it right back here in the back. So that is the ideal place. There's another indentation on this side, and most builders like myself, we use that for the headlights. But if your Precedent, somebody put the headlight switch over there, then I would suggest that you're going to have to relocate your headlight switch to this side, because there's not going to be enough room behind here for that gauge to use that indentation. So the tool that I use is a 52 millimeter. I don't know if that can pick up or not. It's scuffed up pretty bad, but it is a 2 3/64 inch. That's kind of a weird size. If you've got a 2 inch, you might could wall her out a little bit and make it work. But that's cheap. I got it off Amazon, 52 millimeter, and I only use it for this one application. So drilling plastic is still pretty sharp. So I'm going to drill a hole there. Now, remember the wake up button. We've got to find a place for it. This is optional. You can put it anywhere you want to. Some people don't even use the wake up button, but it's a nice feature, and I'll explain that later in the video. So we've got to find some place on the dash to do it. If it didn't have this sticker, I would probably put it over here, but this bit that I use, which is a 5/8, it generally rips that pretty bad and stretches it. So I'm probably going to mount it somewhere here on the bottom corner. It doesn't matter where you mount it, just as long as you've got access to it. And again, we'll talk about more about that. So let me go ahead and drill these holes and come back. All right, guys, so I got my 2 holes. So I decided where my gauge was, to put my wake up button right there next to it. One other thing, why you've got this off, this battery meter that normally works on lead acid batteries, we're not doing lead acid. So let's unplug one side of it. Doesn't matter which side, unplug them both if you want to, but I'm going to unplug one side. So now that is inactive. It's not going to trick the customer and cause any false signs. So now I'm going to mount my wake up button and my gauge. It comes with this little U-bolt kit. Those are 7 millimeter, and I generally hand tighten that with a deep wall 7 millimeter socket. So, all right, guys. So on this wake up button, if you can see the camera, there's a little tab. It's going to make it easy for me to index this. I like to put that straight up. So I'm going to slide that into the hole. And on the back side, you're going to have that little sleeve. We're going to tighten that up. And the size that is I'm using a 3/4. So I'm not sure if there's a metric equivalent to that. And we'll get that tightened up. There we go. Then on the gauge, just try to center it left and right. So to begin with, I'm gonna put my little horseshoe bracket on there. Some of these wires may get in the way, but you can just push them out. And on the back of these little nuts, there's these little grooves. That's kind of acting like a lock washer to keep it from backing out. So tighten a little bit on each side. You know what, and I never tighten them that tight, maybe 20 foot-pounds, maybe not even that much. So I'm twisting with my fingers, and once I'm snug, I'm gonna look at the front and make sure it looks pretty straight, and it does. So now I'm ready to put it back together. Guys, before I jump to the next step, this is the wire that goes, this is the blue wire that goes on the back of the ignition switch. You can tell someone come in before me and it's got this type of connector. I'm gonna repair that before I move on. All right, guys, so on this orange trigger wire,
So that is going to need to join in on the same wires, that blue wire that I just did a little repair on. So the method I like to use is this little terminal here. Is called, I don't know what it called. I think it called it add a circuit or add a link or whatever. But anyway, it allows me to put this on the orange wire. And once I plug the orange wire on the ignition switch blue wire can plug right into there. So they're both on there pretty solid. So that's not supplied either. So these are cheap, get them off Amazon. If you decide to cut the wires and join them together, that's going to do the same purpose. But again, I'm doing this and I'm charging somebody, so I'm going to try to do it as professional as I can. So I am probably going to cut off another 4 inches worth of length because I don't need it. My ignition switch is right there where that groove is. And once I do that, then I'm going to put up my key plate and I'm going to go ahead and plug in these 2 wires to my meter. I'm going to plug this wire up to my wake up button and then plug in the headlight switch. Remember the 2 yellow wires, it doesn't matter which way. And then also the end connector here that plugs in this little mini harness to the main harness. So let me go ahead and get that installed. All right, so that went together nicely. Everything's in place. I'm gonna go ahead and mount the floor mat. The next step, I'm gonna go ahead and mount the charger, and we're getting very close. All right, guys, so if you remember early in the video, I cut out that little notch. That is so this charger will fit down there. The charger does have a light that'll tell you how the charging cycle's going. I like to face that forward. It's a little easier for you to see. So as we slide this right into place, that's going to be a good place for it. So I will take the supplied hardware, which I need to, there it is right there on the ground. So these are 5/16 self-tapping screws, and they do a good job with plastic. If you're going to mount the charger over here to this side along the frame rail, drill yourself a pilot hole because they will snap off. But you can actually mount it in the front two in the slots, but in the rear there's going to be a gap right here, so we can just scoot over just a little bit and I'll show you how that's done. All right, I got the front two installed in the slot. The rear one, you just have to kind of go up into the metal a little bit. I'm trying to do this with one hand. It's very difficult. I'm not going to be able to show you. Oh, there you go. So once I get it started, you throw out a little bit of metal tubing. But it's gonna grab it fine. So even though I didn't use the supplied slots for this location, that joker ain't going nowhere. So now it's time for me to unwrap some of these wires. All right, so my method of doing this is I'm gonna try to bunch all the wires right here in the center of the golf cart. The battery will keep it from going any further that way, but it'll be out of the way. So the one on the rear is your quick connector for your charging port over here. So if you're doing this with 2 hands instead of 1 hand like I am, you could probably bunch all these together and only use about 3 or 4 zip ties. I'm going to use more than that, and the only reason I'm doing that because I'm doing this with 1 hand to show you guys step by step. So cannot cut that and shorten it, so I will bunch these together right there, zip tie it, make sure that's plugged in. On the front side of the charging port, you've got this thick wire, and that is your main positive and negative. So these are going to go to your positive and negative terminals of your battery, so that can actually charge it. So I'm gonna coil those up, zip tie them, and I'm gonna have just enough leads to go maybe to the top of this battery tray because I don't need any more. Pull that aside. If you remember that one, we don't need it. That's your charger interlock. So I'm probably gonna tuck it underneath here, and it's gonna end up getting zip tied some of the other ones just to keep it out the way, to keep it looking neat as possible. Then you've got this is important wire. This is called your CAN. Actually, it's got it printed on there, C-A-N. Communication Access Network. This is what's going to communicate with the battery, the BMS on the battery, knowing when to cut this charger on and off. So that wire there is a good bit thinner. Again, I'm gonna coil it up. Where does it plug into? If you look at the DIN connector for your meter, you've got 2 CAN connectors, and it doesn't matter which one. So you can use the blue and brown one or the white and black one, it doesn't matter. They're the exact same connectors. So just pick one, plug it up. So that it goes through from the charger, the signal goes through this wire into that DIN plug into one of the COM ports. So super simple, but if you forget to plug this up, you'll know it because the charger will run for about 5 seconds, then cut off. Then run for about 5 seconds and cut off. So don't forget to plug that up. All right, so I zip tied those up, and I went ahead and grabbed my main wiring harness. I'm gonna make sure all that is kind of down and low, but I also realized I need to plug up my harness to my voltage reducer. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug that up. I'm gonna route it around the back side, and next time I do a zip tie, I'm gonna zip tie that up in there also. One other thing to notice about this voltage reducer, it is fused. So you've got a fuse going out and a fuse going in. So that's nice to have that protection. I'm gonna route it right here. So if you ever have a problem with your accessories not working, check this fuse on either one of these, in or out. Now is also a good time we need to wire up any 12-volt accessories. So we've plugged our harness in, and I will arrange it over there, zip tie all that out. But these are the other end coming out of that harness. So, you know, our orange wire is inside that black connector. It's going to ignition switch. That is what's going to trigger to cut this on and off. So when your key's off, the voltage reducer will not be active or powered up. So the ones with the ring terminals, the yellow goes to your positive, the black goes to your negative. On the black and red, which is a little bit thicker, that is your positive, negative 12 volts. So I knew that my light harness, because I checked the voltage before we started it, the blue was your positive, so that's going to go to my red wire. And then the black negative, it was under here. There it is right there. The black negative, a lot of times it'll have that little male bullet connector. Sometimes it won't. But anyway, I know that's my negative. Used to go right there. But that's my negative that will go to the thick black negative there for my 12 volts. So that will activate my headlights. So let me get that wired up together and continue on with my wire management. All right, so we've got everything zip tied up. I know it looks like a mess now. Once I set the battery in, I got my charging cables, charger leads. I've got my voltage regulator leads. I've got my DIN plugs down here. I did plug in the wake up button harness. Remember, that one there, that loose square plug is unused. Don't worry about it. The other connector was like a little round connector, and it did have some arrows on each end, so you can see how that fits in. So I'm gonna push this to the side, set my battery in, laying right over there, and get my J-hook ready, and we're gonna get this thing rolling here very soon. All right, guys, so I got the battery placed in there. I've got my J-hook laying down there, hooked under the rod. It's going to come up like that. So inside the kit, when I unwrap the bags, you've got a little top hat that'll go over there. I'm gonna take 2 hands to do that. Comes with a nut that is an 11/16. And again, it's got those little knurls on the bottom. So once it starts grabbing hard, I'm gonna stop with that. Maybe 20 foot-pounds. Again, I'm guessing maybe Eco will have something on there. You're also gonna have your 2 13mm bolts that are going the side of the battery. And then you've got your covers that'll go on top. It just slides right over the top of those and snaps on like that to keep anything from touching it in case you do use this for storage, because you're going to have a lot of extra rooms. Now, when I go to bolt on these wires or to install these cables, I always want to put the thickest cable up against the battery first. So I'll have your main positive up against it first. The next thickest one that I'm going to use is going to be your battery charging cable on top of it. Then I'm going to have the voltage reducer. So thickest against the battery and then get thinner as you get out. So let me go ahead and bolt that up. I'm also going to plug up my COM1 and COM2. One is for your battery meter. The other is for your wake up button. And do all this with the battery off. It actually cut on right now, but do it all with the battery off. All right, guys. So that's what this is going to look like. I did fail to mention these COM1, COM2, they'll only fit one way, so you can't get them reversed up. So now I need to go ahead and bolt in my J-hook. All right, now that I got my J-hook tight, the battery is secure, and I wanted to show you something. Remember that notch I cut out? It just gives me a little more room to shift it towards the back. Is there room up front? Yeah, there is room, but it's going to be pushing this up pretty tight. So to me, it's just a lot easier when I take that off. If you don't have the tool to take it off, I'm sure you'll get it in there without it. So now let's trying to think what is next. I think that's it. That should be everything. So let me get the key and let's try it out. All right, guys, so now we're ready to cut the battery on. So the next step is going to be to double check your wires. I've got all my positive for my charger, the main cable, and the voltage reducer. Then all my black grounds are going over here to search for your Eco Battery app right there. We need to cut the battery on. And there it is. It's showing serial number ending with 120H. And yep, that's my battery. Click on that, connect it to it. There it is. There's a firmware update. Click OK. Update firmware. And let it do its thing. So generally this doesn't take too awful long. I'm trying a new feature here, screen recording. But if you can see what I'm seeing, your on-off button is flashing. The gauge is reading 0. But again, we need to update the firmware on every new battery install. If you also are installing a EB Power AC kit, you need to update that firmware as well. So we're a little over 40%. So it is climbing. It's getting there. Guys, I know the video's long, but again, I just didn't want to miss any steps at all for you guys working on this at home or on a weekend. You didn't have anybody to call. All right, we're getting there. So now the battery has cut off. The gauge is cut off. Just thinking. All right, the battery just cut back on, the gauge cut on. And that should be it. That is connecting to my battery, 49%. All right. All right, so we've got the battery firmware update done. I've got my charger running now. Plugged in my extension cord. You can use a good thick 12 gauge extension cord or get one from Eco Battery like that one. You can see my gauge is on. My wake up button is also lit up. You can see it's putting out 14.7 amps. That is how much the charger is. Now when you drive it and you put it under a load, it'll go to a negative number. It tells you how many amps the system is drawing. So it's only 50%, and that's pretty much normal when you get them straight out of the box. So I'm gonna let this charge up, and let's go over the tools that I use. All right, so this cart had a basket up front. So I'm just gonna go through it, and everything I used, I put right back here in this basket. So I got some zip ties, bag of zip ties. I used a cordless drill. That is a T30 Torx. Get that out of the way. I also used a T15. That's right there at the key panel. I used my 52mm hole saw, or 2 3/64. That's where I cut a hole for the gauge. I used a 5/16 nut driver. You can use a socket and a 1/4-inch adapter if you don't have that. I used my favorite tool, my stitch remover. 3/4 deep wall socket. That's to tighten up the wake up button sleeve. 7mm deep wall. I just used it hand tight to tighten up the gauge. A Phillips head bit. I think I used that on my charging port adapter. Some older Club Car Presidents may use a Torx, a really small, like a 10 Torx or something, but that's what this one used. That was a pick I used for the trim that goes around the charging port. That is my, is it 11/16? Yeah, that's what I use to tighten up my through hole bolt right there. That's a 5/8, excuse me. That is a 5/8 hole saw. Be very careful with these. So I didn't show it on video because I wanted to make sure I didn't mess it up. I'll drill it about halfway in, then I'll come from the back side and drill it the other half, and it just falls out. But if you're not careful, that will walk on you and scratch up your face. So be careful on that. Use some wire crimpers and strippers, extra zip ties. Had a couple different wire cutters. I used those at one time. I use these little hook cutters for the thicker cables. Those work out really good. I like to use these 10 snips for the bottom of the key panel, just so your cables will reach out. This one did have an OBC. Not all of them have OBC. The 14 and newer, I believe, or 15 and newer does not have OBC, but I used the needle nose for that process. For some reason, I ended up with 2 set of wire strippers. Not a big deal. A flathead screwdriver. I used that when I pulled out for the OBC. 13mm wrench. That's a ratchet wrench. I just like them. No big deal. Safety glasses. Cordless drill, if I didn't mention that. Maybe I had a couple cordless drills. Some heat shrink tubing for the OBC. And then a heat gun. So kind of basic tools. I mean, I don't see anything here, you know, that's kind of an odd size hole saw, but most of you guys should have this in your tool. All right, guys, so the install is complete. If you ever walk up to your cart and the gauge is off, because that gauge is really designed to be on all the time that the battery is awake or on, then you know it went to sleep. So this is what that wake up button does. So if you walk up to it, it's I think the factory program is 7 days without any activity at all. It'll automatically go to sleep to reserve the juice of the battery, and that is programmable. I do have a video, so subscribe to my channel. You'll be able to see how you can adjust all that on your phone app, but just push the wake up button. And when you push the wake up button, that illuminates everything. So there comes your gauge alive, and there goes your battery juice. So anyway, that's what the wake up button is for. Keeps you from lifting the seat. Now what you can do, if you've got a Generation 2, you can lift the seat and just cycle the power button off. That's my personal card over there with all the junk on it. That is a Generation 2 Eco battery, still a fine battery. It's the 105, just like this one. And so if it sits there over 7 days, I just need to lift the seat and cycle it on and off. But the Gen 3, that is actually a pretty cool little feature there. So there you have it. That's a wrap. So I appreciate you guys watching and hanging in there for such a long video. Like I said, a lot of this stuff may be repeat to a lot of you guys, but for someone who's never done it before, I hope this type of video will help you out. So like I mentioned a little bit in some of the subtitles, you know, I am an eco battery dealer, so I'd love to be your dealer if you don't have someone local to you that you trust. I promise you can trust me. I've got a good reputation, good 5-star review. But reach out to me, email James at Kartz-N-Fartz, or you can call my cell phone. I'll list the number right here on the screen. Love to have a phone call with you. I like to look at my store as a little more than just a click and pay with a credit card. I'd love to talk to you, love to meet you, love to add you to my contacts. So anyway, enjoy your eco battery. Like I said, there is a video on my channel, so click and subscribe on how to program it. I think we went over it in this video about the firmware update and such. On this
Gen 3 battery. If it does need any firmware updates in the future, you don't need to call your dealer. You can actually do everything yourself on your cell phone, which is pretty cool. So anyway, thanks again for tuning in, and look forward to hearing from you if you're interested in one of these eco batteries. Have a great night.